It's common knowledge at this point that most of those who work in or write about the games industry are demented goblinoids. We understand this. We accept this. But there is a facet of their evil that is too often overlooked, and that is their broadening of the definition of harassment, which has, once again, been brought into sharp focus by coverage of Sweet Baby Ink Detected and surrounding controversy. Controversy heralded by some as Gamergate 2, though never for one very important reason. It's always because it's triggered by a wokeoid, because of the dodgy press coverage that set people off. Fair reasons for a comparison, sure, but there's something else that gets overlooked. A more niche comparison that should not be ignored. Back during what's called Gamergate, Zoe Quinn got a court order against Aaron Gajoni requiring that he, quote, not post any further information about the plaintiff or her personal life online, or to encourage, quote, hate mobs, unquote. Now, this became a bit of a mess because Quinn had the order vacated, which ultimately resulted in Gajoni's appeal on the basis that the order was a First Amendment violation being rendered moot. But it was a clear shot fired in a war that most people have no idea is even occurring, and that is the war over what harassment is. More specifically, the fight over whether or not speech about someone constitutes harassment. To be clear, we are not discussing true threats or libel. Those are already recognized as unacceptable. Nor are we discussing any kind of violation of privacy with no element of public interest to justify it. That's already recognized as being bad, too, legally and socially. We're also not talking about speech which has no function other than to facilitate crime. That's already seen as wrong and is also an incredibly narrow category. Anything you can try and trot out as an example is probably already well defined as something unacceptable. No, this is a clash over whether saying true things about someone or expressing a negative opinion about someone to a willing audience of people who are not even them counts as harassment. Or even saying things about themselves, as was the case with Aaron Gajoni. He talked about his own life experiences, and this was temporarily shut down by a court as a measure against harassment. The consequences of this definition are, frankly, horrifying. A little hilarious too, though, to be fair, as prime victims of this standard would be anyone speaking out about having been sexually assaulted. These beliefs about harassment are the ultimate #MeToo killer. Of course, double standards always run rampant, and I'm sure the expectation would be that correct victims get a pass or exception. But that only works when your team's in control, and at that point, if that's how you're going to operate, why even bother with rules or law? Answer me honestly. Did you know this, specifically, was such a significant battle that's raging? The way games journalists and games industry professionals talk about harassment, you'd think being talked about online was the only form it took, far from it being controversial to even consider that to be harassment to begin with. Luckily, people typically seem to recognize the potential to get bitten in the ass. Back in 2016, a Utah state representative proposed a bill that would make saying someone's name with the intent to annoy or offend them illegal, as an anti-doxing and harassment measure. He backed off on that right quick. But Jesus, can you imagine? Games journos, games industry professionals, though. These guys are a different breed of butthurt. For all their talk of fragile masculinity over the years, the true danger was their fragile egos all along, shattered into shards to stab into anyone they can get their claws on. I think they're willing to go all the way, to screw the whole internet up, to screw all of culture up, just to avoid some nerd calling them names. And they play extremely dirty, using the press to pressure and networking to infiltrate, subvert, and undermine. Their hope was that, by the time you'd even recognize there is a conflict, you would have already lost. But you haven't lost yet. And they've shown you their ugly, rotting face. A few more people can see it now. No matter how much it hurts a wannabe influencer's feelings, or jars a journalist's self-value, or grates on a game dev's nerves, talking about someone is not harassment. Calling them names to a willing audience is not harassment of them. Just don't look, retard, you stupid weak bitch. Oh, someone sent you a silly message like I've been sent 1,000,000 times. Who cares? You cannot cut out the tongue of someone who's done nothing wrong because an unreasonable person listened to them and then acted unreasonably. Otherwise, literally any innocent action can be transmuted into a crime by the presence of a moron to witness it and then act. But make no mistake, reason isn't important here. Their motivation isn't justice. They didn't arrive at their position rationally. They're not even simply misguided in their pursuit of a safer world. They lust for power. They nurse tender egos. They crave control.
Look how hypocritical they are. Isn't it ironic that this could screw people they like over? Oh, silly journos, maybe it'll backfire on them in the future.
They don't care. The Cluster B Brigade want you in a cage. Now. It's that simple. These are the people who will post a public article, a tweet, a video onto a site with millions of users, leave comments open, and then call people posting underneath it harassment. They'll shit-talk hundreds of thousands, and complain when 100 people name-call them back. They shove their garbage in the face of the world, and then demand silence or adoration only. Here's a thought instead. Don't piss in the ocean if you don't want a crab to climb up your leg and pinch your dick. Your profile isn't you. It's media. Your posts aren't you. It's media. Pictures of you, video of you even. That's not you. It's media. And commentary on media must not be restricted, no matter how many panic attacks public response provokes. But, as usual, that's just another one of my harmful opinions.